And then I'll turn the program over to Adria.
All right. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
You can hear me okay? All right. So,
Terrific.
it's great to have everybody here tonight to talk about the 17-year cicadas. This meme that's on the front of the slide was given to me by Eric Day. What a riot. I-66 is still under construction 17 years later. So 17-year cicadas, they were here in 2004. And if you lived here in 2004, you kind of know what you're about to experience. If you haven't, I know that there are some great slides here tonight, and there's a bunch of great resources on the internet that you can download from Virginia Cooperative Extension. So just a little bit of a side note, how to access Cooperative Extension right now. We're still located in the same building, in the Panino building on the 10th floor at the Government Center. Right now, our staff is still, excuse me, doing some teleworking. So I would like to advise you to just contact the office, either call or email prior to just popping by, because not everyone is in the office every day. And I certainly value your time just as much as I know you value mine. If you're kind of doing internet research on anything, the things that I can advise you to do when it comes to landscaping, gardening, add .edu after your search in whatever search engine you use, Google, Bing, whatever it might be, to then make sure that you're not getting a bunch of advertisements. You're getting research-based information straight from the university. So just to kind of start it off, I wanted to say Fairfax County Public Libraries are your resource for a lot of things. When I first started in this job, I learned that the libraries often are my partner for a lot of programs, and one of the biggest things is where to get a soil test kit. And that's been a big question during COVID, so I figured I'd put that out there. That the libraries have been fantastic in supporting us. You could even get one through curbside service. You can get one over at the main government center at Green Spring Park, at all of the Merrifield Garden Centers, Ace Hardware in Fairfax, Burke Nursery, Campbell and Ferrara, and Hollywoods and Vine. And these nurseries have a fresh stock of soil test kits that I just sent to them this spring. So give them a call and make sure they have one, or that you want to stop by or ask for one when you're nearby. The other thing that I just wanted to point out, which is a go-to kind of resource for a lot of people in the area, the University of Maryland Landscape Extension Department puts out a weekly pest update, and you can access it on this website right here. This website is new. It just recently changed. I've advertised this link before. I love my colleagues at the University of Maryland, and they do a wonderful job of putting out this information in the newsletter once a week. They've started their newsletters last week, but they also started with a new website. So go ahead and check that out. It's a great resource, and you can also learn about other things that are going on in the area as far as pest control. So Brood X, what you might want to call it, but it's really Brood 10. Brood 10 is the brood that of 17-year cicadas that is most of Northern Virginia. What we will be seeing, Fairfax, Northern Virginia, Loudoun, Arlington, parts of Prince William, will be the cicadas that went into the ground in 2004 and now are emerging in 2021. This is Brood 10, and the cicadas will emerge across 15 states. They feed on on root tissue underground, usually on carbohydrate sugars underground on trees and shrubs. And these guys, these cicadas will emerge from their nymphal skins, and will become adults, as you see here. This one is just about finishing sunning himself on a tire. And as they sun themselves, they develop the darker colors that you see on the skin. And I'll on the exoskeleton, and I'll show you some of the photos as we go through. So what is a brood? A brood is a large group that emerges at the same time. And the broods are in Roman numerals. So brood 10 is real. A lot of times people call this brood X because they get all freaked out, the sci-fi, X-Files kind of thing. But really it's brood 10. The cicadas emerge in huge groups, and they do this as almost like an evolutionary survival technique, so that they kind of almost overwhelm their predators as they emerge. If you can imagine, a typical suburban backyard is about a quarter of an acre. With 4 yards together, there could be up to 1.5 million cicadas per acre. And that would be really amazing in some aspects, because Northern Virginia is very developed, and there might be some that may not have made it through some of our development, but there will be a large number that will emerge in yards and near trees that have not been touched since 2004. The brood 10 is also the largest geographic brood. So that's one thing that is really amazing about brood 10, because one thing about brood 10 is that it emerges from anywhere from, I think, Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, all the way out to Indiana, and then south of us. The soil is the most important thing. People say, when is this going to happen? What date? I don't have a date on my calendar. The date is when the soil is consistently at 64 degrees. They will emerge in a period of time about 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. About 64 degrees right now. I went outside and checked my soil temperature. I'm about 58 degrees. In warmer areas of your yard, you might be creeping towards 60 degrees, but you're not yet 64. Predictions for the Northern Virginia area for this area is roughly around the beginning of May, around May 1st to the middle of May. The whole process takes about 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes it seems way longer, because you get these early stragglers that come out, like the lonely guys that are coming out and saying, hey, where is everybody? And then you get some that are just kind of emerging really late. They're the slow bloomers, so to speak. The eggs are typically laid on small pencil-sized branches, and then the eggs will hatch as the branches fall to the ground, and that's roughly about 4 to 6 weeks later, around the end of June, beginning of July, roughly. Then their offspring, the eggs will hatch, and the first nymphs will crawl back into the ground, and then will emerge in 2038. The cicadas can emit sounds between 80 and 100 decibels, and they actually are in fact attracted to power tools like mowing the lawn. So if you find yourself outside mowing the lawn in the middle of the day, in a warm day, you might find some actually flying towards you, landing on your shoulder, landing near you, flying on your head, flying on your ball cap. So if that's not what you want, you might not want to mow right in the dead of the day, in the middle of the day when it's really warm. Do that when it's cool in the morning, when they're still emerging and still warming up. Their hemolymph is still filling out into their wings, and they're kind of warming up in the sunlight. It is the male cicadas that make the really loud sound. Females will make sound, but the males really make that sound in their hollow abdomen. They have a organ that's called a timbal that they vibrate against their hollow abdomen to attract the females. They're singing to the females. They want to find the mother of their nymphs. Now, the females only mate once, but the males can mate multiple times. If your dogs or pets seem to be attracted to wanting to eat them because a lot of animals will be eating these cicadas. You may want to limit their consumption. This is my small dog Pickles, and Pickles, I am betting I know I would win this bet that she will make herself sick on cicadas. There will be dogs that probably will eat a little too much, where there might be some that, you know, they eat one and they're done. Um, Cicadas, again, 80 to 100 decibels. So what does that really mean? Your average vacuum cleaner, your radio in your car is around 75 decibels, where things that are really comparable to that are somewhere like heavy traffic, power lawnmower, a subway, boombox, motorcycle, ATV, loud school dance, getting closer to a chainsaw, maybe almost as loud as a leaf blower. So these cicadas will be very loud, and they will be loud at night, and they're going to sing to their females and the mother of their nymphs, and they're going to sing with each other high in the treetops for 2 weeks, and everyone will be like, when will they stop? Well, they will go away. But it's something to enjoy, and I think nature lovers will enjoy it because you will get to see other animals enjoying all of this wonderful amount of food that the cicadas are providing because of the amount of protein and everything that is around for these insects emerging all at the same time. Animals, squirrels, birds, skunks, raccoons, foxes will be thrilled at this point, and you will get to see them enjoying a life that they have not had. And this is something that they've not experienced in their lifetime. So here's the map, folks. This is 2021, where we are right here. This is from Stormwatch ABC for Brood 10. Now, this is one of the maps that I got from Virginia Tech. This also shows all the way out to Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. They talk about it as far west as Chicago, in some areas of West Virginia, down south along North Carolina and Southern Virginia, and then as far north as New Jersey, Connecticut, and Long Island, folks. So the emergence happens when soil reaches 64 degrees. Again, if you have a soil thermometer, this is going to be something fun if you want to go outside and really follow it along and see what happens. What is going on underground, you're wondering? Are they just sleeping? Are they just waiting? What's going on? They're doing a lot of activity. They go through 4 different life stages underground. Here are the eggs. Here are the first nymphs that crawl underground, and then they go through several life stages. And then as they emerge out of the ground, they will what will happen, and some of you, if you decide to go out at night and do some exploration, the exoskeleton will split right here at the back of the exoskeleton, and the adult will emerge out of the exoskeleton from the nymph. It will be this white color. It will be very much sometimes what people will say is that, oh, this is you know, a new cicada. It's a new white cicada. Every cicada that emerges at night will be white first, and then will turn its colors with the darkened skin and the darkened colors on the wings. Okay, so underground, you'll notice the tunneling, and there was some mentioning of some activity in Reston and other places. I've seen some activity here. The cicadas are about 12 to 18 inches down in the soil, and they're going to move up and down and tunnel through the soil. Last fall, they were moving up and down and tunneling through the soil. They're going to create little holes like this. After it rains, you might see some activity because the soil is loosened and able to be crawled through. Then like I was saying earlier, we received some pictures recently, the last week or so, in the extension office, that this is from a raccoon that was digging up some cicada nymphs underneath some trees and shrubs in someone's landscape. So if you notice this, this is not uncommon, and we are seeing this all over the county, from south, north, east, west county. I've received several photos all the way down to Fort Belvoir area. This is very common because the animals are smelling these insect activity and insect movement in the soil, and so they're hungry. It's time for a meal. So the nymphs will crawl out of the soil. They'll crawl onto trees, shrubs, patio furniture, grill covers, whatever they can crawl up on a flower pot, and then as they emerge from their exoskeleton, they are probably, this is probably the most vulnerable stage of the cicada. To be honest with you, anytime an insect molts, it's a very vulnerable stage for that insect because of predators to be able to get an easy prey here. They, in order to get to this point, this guy has to use a lot of energy. It takes so much energy to get out of that tight exoskeleton, its nymph exoskeleton, and unfurl its body and its wings. And it's very fragile and very vulnerable at this point. There are many times that you might see some failure to molt. That might be that the wings don't completely develop, or it doesn't completely come out of its exoskeleton, and it has part of its exoskeleton around its back part of its abdomen here, or maybe some of the wings didn't completely develop. This might have happened due to crowding on perching areas when they're first emerging out of the soil, or could be blown off from a windstorm, or damage from any kind of lawn chemicals or pesticides. Here's just a comparison of the skin and the newly emerged adult. This will eventually turn a darkened, hardened color. Once it gets to be that darkened, hardened color and an exoskeleton, there's no kind of going back. So usually it'll be this light color for about an hour. It usually takes about an hour or so for it to warm up and develop color. And this usually happens more quickly in the morning in the sunlight. You'll notice it almost before your eyes. You can watch this happening. It's amazing. And again, this is a way, and as you see in the picture down here, where predator satiation is really the evolutionary strategy for these insects, that they've survived this long. There's reports back hundreds of years of these insects, and at first people thought that they were locusts. They are not locusts. We should definitely do not call them locusts. Locusts are more closely related to grasshoppers. These are not at all locusts. Locusts certainly don't have this developed wing that cicadas have as well. So like I was saying earlier, typically the life cycle is above ground is roughly about 2 to 3 weeks when it's mating, um, and then gonna lay eggs. The female will use its barbed ovipositor, and that's this organ right here where she lays her eggs using that ovipositor. It has a spike or a spine on it to really gouge out thin barked trees. These are trees that are with really small pencil shaped branches on the tips of the branches, where it'll cut open the bark and lay its eggs in that area. That area will then break and fall to the ground, and the nymphs will crawl out and crawl into the soil. This is some of the damage that people will see typically on larger trees. It's the tips that are about 12 inches or so of the tips of the branches. So those really skinny pencil-sized branches. And usually you see this flagging, they call it flagging, in early July and late June. This is on maple. Maple is one tree that does receive damage, and oaks as well. So how to protect some trees, okay? So protecting small trees, a temporary fix. This is something that you want to be prepared for, but don't put up the netting until the females actually start laying their eggs and they start kind of laying their eggs would be where they would be just kind of hanging out on that uh, 12 inches of branch, and they're not really moving. If they're still emerging and they're still coming out of the ground, you don't want to put the nets on there because you don't want them to crawl inside the net. That's something you don't want. So you want to put on the netting around early June, roughly. The netting should be about 1/4 of an inch or smaller to make sure that they keeps out the cicadas. And you want to put some weight on it so the wind doesn't blow it off. Here's a, or maybe you tie it back to the trunk. Here's a photo right here that was from Purdue University. You put up the netting again when the females start laying their eggs. And I mean, this isn't going to be a pretty time for your trees. And this isn't something that you want on your trees for very long, because your trees and shrubs are going to have, they're still going to be doing photosynthesis. They're still going to be respiring. You don't want to have them tied up like that for too long. And again, this is a temporary fix. This is it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be perfect. And you just do this for a temporary period of time, and then you take it off. This is something that if you've planted a tree in the last year or two and that you are very concerned, like for a Japanese maple or a small apple tree or a small dogwood, it might be something you consider. For a larger tree, that damage, it will be able to sustain that damage. So, okay. The other thing that people really get freaked out about is the number of nymph shells. These aren't going to hurt you. These are just dried up exoskeletons from the insects. Just sweep them up and toss them out. You can put them in your compost bin. They would be a great source of protein for other insects in your compost. So, some common questions. Can I put anything on my lawn to kill the cicadas now, like kill the nymphs before they come out? I'll be honest with you, not really. This is like the last life stage. And at this point, and they're about 2 to 3 weeks before they're going to emerge, they have super tough skin. So what you would have to put on your lawn to kill them would be a heck of a lot. And that's not at all recommended, because there are other things that you would kill as well. Can I spray my trees? Well, not really, since they're laying eggs. They're not really feeding on the trees. These females are going to be laying their eggs. They lay their eggs high in the treetops, and some trees are not going to be able to be treated for the distance high, 50, 60 feet up in the tree canopy. So what trees and shrubs can they damage? Commonly, people see in this area oaks, maples, cherries, apples, crab apples, other fruit trees, hawthorn, redbud sustaining the most damage, dogwood. But there are over 200 different types of trees, excuse my typo there, trees that can be damaged, and evergreens are rarely damaged. So a lot of times people will say, well, what do they feed on? They really don't feed on anything in this stage of the game. Their primary job here is to emerge, to sing their little hearts out, to mate, and to lay eggs. They may do a little bit of feeding. They might chew a little bit on leaves or a little bit on this, but really the damage that they're doing is the laying of eggs. It is not feeding on your plants, and it's not chewing on your plants. The emergence is probably the most exciting thing for a lot of entomologists around in the Northeast area and Mid-Atlantic area. For those citizen scientists that are joining us tonight, University of Connecticut, UConn, has a really great resource page on cicadas, and they do a lot of data collection on emergence, and they do a cicada emergence watch so that you can report when you have actually had an emergence or you're starting to see emergence in your yard. Okay, see if we got a couple more. Okay, so now you may be saying, all right, Adria, you've told me all about these 17-year cicadas, but then I'm going to get these other cicadas in August. Well, these are called the Dog Day cicada or the annual cicada. These cicadas come out right around the same time that you see the Dog Day constellation, Dog Day cicadas. And they come out usually in late July and August, and they're much larger and robust. Their body is much larger and robust, and they have like a green hue to them. Okay. All right, let's see where else we are. Here's again a map of the cicada emergence, where they're going to emerge here. Northern Virginia, most of Maryland, except for this little bit right here. And then you got, of course, our Northern Neck area. Then a lot of the panhandle of West Virginia. So most of our area will see this. There will be some parts of Prince William County where you won't see cicadas. There will be some parts of other areas where you may not see as many cicadas. Okay, so one quick thing that I did want to mention that is more than just pesticide disposal for homeowners. This is something that I like to announce because I only do it every 5 years. We do a partnership with Virginia Department of Agriculture, and this pesticide disposal is open to all businesses, landscapers, homeowners, anybody who has a pesticide business license, commercial businesses like box stores to dispose pesticides with us. We do it every 5 years, and this fall, September 9th, is the date for Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria. The last time I did the program, the pesticide disposal, and I can talk more about it if needed, but we collected almost 8,000 pounds, and it was really amazing. Some of these large barrels were brought in from golf courses that are no longer chemicals being used. So we do this in large and small quantities, and more information that I have for you is that we'll take 50 pounds of unknowns and up to 5 gallons of unknowns as well. So if something spills and you clean it up and you really don't know what it is, or sometimes people might call this floor sweepings, we'll take up to 50 pounds of that. Okay. Kathy?
Yes.
What do you say about, do we want to take some questions on cicadas before we jump to spotted lanternfly?
I think so, because we are
Yeah,
getting quite a lot of
let's do that.
questions.
I
So
noticed that we had a few popping up there.
yeah. So the first group of questions are so what precautions should I take to protect young trees, shrubs, and gardenias?
I think your gardenias are going to be fine. You know, if you have netting, or if you have any of the sometimes people have really lightweight fabric, frost protection fabric, you can probably put that on some smaller plants and shrubs. They're really going to be interested in pencil-sized branches. So things that are smaller than a pencil or larger than a pencil, they're not going to be interested in. They're not going to be interested in evergreens. They're really going to be interested in deciduous trees and some shrubs.
Okay, and then somebody asked specifically about their arborvitae.
I don't think any arborvitae will be damaged at all. They'll produce a sap once the female starts to use her ovipositor and try it out. If she tries it, she's not going to be interested because of the sap. She wants to lay her eggs where she's able to kind of fit her ovipositor into that dry bark.
Okay. And an unrelated question, what's the current turnaround time on soil kits?
Current soil test turnaround time, I think it's about, somewhere around a week to 10 days. It could be up to 14 days, but, you know, they are emailing all of the results now. If you don't get an email, I have actually just received some information on this today, Kathy, that
Okay.
people really should check their spam folder, because they have found that, especially Google customers, I have found it in my spam box. And so just if you're looking for your soil test results, and you haven't found them, you can also give me a call. We can find it. The extension office can look in the database.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a couple of questions about the type of netting to get. Where would you purchase something like that? Can you use landscape fabric? And how do you know, can you clarify exactly when to put the netting on?
So, okay, so a lot of the netting is available at a lot of the different garden stores in the area. Right now, I'm pretty certain that they are putting it out there, knowing that people will be asking for it. I know you can purchase it online. There's a lot of online outlets for it, like Gardens Alive and Gardener's Supply. Um, their landscape fabric, I'm wondering if it's weed fabric that you're talking about, or if it's a different kind of fabric. So if it's weed fabric, I don't know if that will work, because that's, going to block out light and other things. If it's a frost fabric, like Remay or frost protection fabric or something like that, you could use it. It just, be careful. The thicker fabrics will also retain heat, and you don't want to cook your plants.
Ah,
So you
good
want to have
point.
something that's at least 1/4 inch hole or smaller, because the cicadas could get in through something a little bit larger than 1/4 inch.
And then what about birds getting caught in your netting? Do you have somebody was asking about that.
Yeah, that is a big thing. I mean, you're not just going to put that netting on and forget about it for, the whole 2 weeks. You'll probably go out there and check it. There'll probably be cicadas on the netting. You'll probably want to go out there and pick it off.
Okay.
You'll probably also, want to go out there and double check that there isn't any other critter in there that's caught trying to eat the cicadas. The most delicious time for cicadas, for birds, really is when they're first emerging. Um, when they're in when and around the netting, you do want to monitor that netting, because if birds get in there or other critters, you could really end up with an entangled mess. So it's not
Okay.
something you want to put on at your house at the northern neck and leave it for 2 weeks and
Okay.
like not monitor it either. I mean, you do expect there to be birds or something else in there when you get back.
Okay.
I think that that's some expectations that we should
Okay.
have.
And
Yeah.
a couple of folks are asking about how long should they keep the netting on the tree?
Well, they're going to probably be laying their eggs sometime around the beginning of June to the end of June. There's going to be early egg layers. There's going to be late, stragglers. It's going to be somewhere around a month. So if you think about it, that netting's going to be on in June. And June, some of the warmer days, we can get days into the 90s in June. So it's not like you want to put frost protection, heavy duty fabric on your plants during that time.
Okay.
Really want the
Okay.
netting.
Yeah. So someone's concerned about their 1-year-old trees that are about 2 to 3 feet tall. And what do you think that person should do about those?
Are they something that they planted like from a seedling sale or something?
I don't have additional
Because
information.
I'm thinking that something like that might be still too small
Too
for them
small.
to lay their eggs.
Mhm. Well, I know I planted 3 trees last year that are about 5 feet tall now, and they're starting to get to be around pencil size.
Mhm.
Um, so those sound like they could benefit from some netting.
They could. Again, they're over, I guess if you also had a lot of cicada damage back in 2004, if you noticed a lot in your own yard, that could also determine how much you really want to put up,
Okay.
how much netting.
Okay. And the earlier question about the small trees, 1 foot, was that they were both planted this year. And so it sounds like if they're not pencil size or larger or around pencil size, then they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's going to be some plants that just might sustain some damage and some natural
Mm-hmm.
pruning. So
Sure. And then a couple of more individual plants, witch hazel and a little leaf hollies. How will they fare with the cicadas?
I think the hollies would be fine, but what was the other one before that?
Uh, little leaf, witch
Witch
hazel.
hazel?
Yeah.
Um, you might get some damage on that witch hazel, but like I said, they're really looking for the thinly barked trees. They
Thinly
favor
barked.
those thinly barked trees like cherries, like apples, like dogwoods. Um, oak
Okay.
trees and maples, you'll see the damage really high up in the treetops. The idea that these insects want to crawl as high as they can, as high up into the treetops as they possibly can,
Mm-hmm.
and sing their little hearts out. Um, they are on a mission. And so the higher they can climb and the louder they can sing, the happier they will be. So they will look to crawl up the taller trees and look to be on those taller treetops, like some of our larger oaks and maples.
Mm-hmm. And then if you are able to wrap your tree, would you put the netting around the trunk as well, or just the branches?
Like I said, Kathy, it's not going to be a pretty time in the
Okay.
landscape. So if you're able to get it wrapped up and securely get it around the trunk, somehow, if it's something that some people are planting, they recommend, transplanting and stuff, actually putting the netting around the base of that plant so that then you can pull it up on top of it, as an
Okay.
idea for some landscapers that were still planting some things this year and they were worried about that. Um, there there was some suggestions for, smaller Japanese maples that are lower to the ground. If netting was put over top of it, it was kind of just draped over top and then bricks kind of holding it down, almost like kind of tenting it over and not really wrapping it around the trunk.
Got it.
Kind of whatever is really going to work in the landscape. This is like a no rules kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so someone has an interesting question here. So the branches where eggs are laid will fall to the ground and the nymphs crawl out and into the ground. Does that mean you should leave the branch debris on the ground for them? How long? I'm not sure the branches fall off the trees.
Some of the branches will fall off the trees.
Okay.
Some won't. Some will remain on the trees. Um, we have found some trees that have brought us some people have brought us trees with cicada damage 2 and 3 years later from 2004.
Okay.
So some of the branches will remain on the trees. Um, the eggs will hatch from that branch where it was laid, that pencil-sized branch where it was laid. The eggs will hatch, and the nymphs will either crawl to the ground or they might fall to the ground. They might crawl out on a leaf and, kind of ride their way to the ground on a falling leaf. There's just so many things that happen in the forest that we don't even get to be witness to.
I understand. I understand. And then I think that's most of the questions. I think we've covered most of them. I did see one. Will a scrunched roll of netting help keep the cicadas from climbing up your tree?
They're going to fly.
They're going to
They're
fly.
not just going to crawl up. Unfortunately, you know, those females, you know, they're going to fly onto because they're going to fly all the way up into the treetops
Got it. And
to
then
lay their eggs too.
do you know if they sing all day and all night? Either or?
If I remember from 2004, it was all day and all night. Um, and it definitely sounded to me, if I remember, um, that more like a car alarm sound, you know, like it kind of was a little bit of a drained car alarm. And I didn't grow up here in Northern Virginia, so I didn't grow up as a kid witnessing this.
Yeah.
So when I first moved here, it was 2001, and 2004 comes along, and my dad's on the phone with me and he's like, tell that person to turn their car alarm off. I'm like, oh no, Dad, this is all day long for the next 2 weeks. So that's what we're going to get ready for.
Okay. Okay. I want to make sure I remind everyone that I did post a link to the handout in the chat. So if you scroll up, you should be able to see that. And then, Adria, do you want to talk a little bit about the lanternfly?
I can, yeah, absolutely. One thing I did want to mention about these cicadas, just as an aside, is that they do have a predator that is an insect predator. It is called a cicada killer, and it is a wasp. It will not hurt you. It will not hurt you or your family unless you absolutely provoke it and swat at it and be aggressive to it. It is a solitary wasp that lives in the ground and will literally pick up and carry one of those cicadas, will sting it with its toxins, and it'll become paralyzed, and it will feed it to its young in its nest in the ground. So if you see that happening, it's just nature happening. A lot of people asked a lot of questions about murder hornets last year and these Asian giant murder hornets. And a lot of the insects that got turned into the extension office were either the cicada killer or a European hornet. And so that was one thing that I just wanted to mention, that we will probably see a lot of wasps going after the cicadas as well.
Okay.
So, the
Were there,
insect,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, are there any other questions related to cicadas? Now would be a good time to pop them in the chat. But I think maybe we've answered them all, or you have. So I should say you have.
We can take questions on whatever. How about I go
Okay.
through a couple more of these slides? And this was just to kind of remind a few people about the spotted lanternfly. It is a invasive insect that has been found in the Winchester area, Frederick County, and has spread to several other counties nearby. And I think it's a good thing to remind everyone that this is not just a pest of landscape or grapes or apples. It is also a pest that will come in on many shipments because it is a very cryptic insect in that it lays its eggs on a lot of different surfaces. And we have found that sometimes it's a very good traveler as well. It's a very good hitchhiker, and it will hitchhike its way on firewood, or even the adults and nymphs will find its way to hitchhike its way into other areas. The wings are often held with the adult like a tent, like this. This is the adult with the spotted wings, where it gets its name, spotted lanternfly. And you hardly ever see the wings spread out like you will often see pictures of this on the internet, where it's almost like it's being pinned for an insect collection. You will hardly ever see it in that position. The only time that you will see it like that is either A, if it's dead, or B, if it's mating or about to be dead. So The area in Winchester just recently had its first egg hatch last week, and another reason why I wanted to highlight this. Here is the size of its first nymphs that is noticed from the egg masses, and the egg masses just look like a splotch of mud. The first instar is typically late April, early May. And then this is the second instar, the third, and the fourth instar. The fourth instar has this distinctive red, black, white dot pattern versus the first three have this kind of blackish color to them, shiny black with white dots. Here's a few that are just stuck on a trap in Winchester, and these are the second and third M-stars. So what we typically see as a problem with agricultural threat is apples and grapes is probably the number 1 and 2 in Virginia that we are most concerned of. In places in Pennsylvania, they have had anywhere from where they would harvest 40 tons of fruit to now harvesting only 4 tons of fruit. And we have just noticed a lot of the infestation in Virginia, mostly in areas that are naturalized or in suburban areas. We haven't yet noticed it as much in our grapes and apples. I'm afraid that that may change this year. Other businesses that are affected, and this is where I really want to talk, is where you see a lot of trucking and transportation, stone, gravel, because this insect came to the US on landscape stone from Japan. Other the egg masses that were on this landscape stone went unnoticed during when it was shipped to the U.S. and then was brought to a stone yard in Philadelphia. It went unnoticed, and a few were of that shipment was also sent to Virginia, and that is how we also got this problem. This is more of the problem that homeowners might experience, and that is where they often aggregate as adults. They feed in aggregation. They like to be around their buddies, and Cornell, Penn State has done numerous research projects on just how they actually will if they do some LIDAR and thermal sensing in grapevine areas and apple orchards, they know that those heated areas are actually the insects moving closer to each other because they like to aggregate their aggregate feeders. They love to feed gregariously. And agritourism, I see it being a problem, as we grow into this infestation, where it could be a problem for wine drinking and agritourism in our area. So these are the fourth nymph instars. The damage that they do is on the phloem of the plant. They're phloem feeders, so they feed on the sugars of the plant, and they make these little damage on the bark where the feeding will cause the bark to die back and have this little canker. That doesn't actually kill the tree just yet. It's just the repeated feeding on that. And what they've noticed is it doesn't actually kill the grapevine. It just weakens it to make it more susceptible to even other pests and diseases. This is generally where it started at first. It was about 1 mile wide by 2 miles wide. The problem there is where it was found was nearby a lot of trucking and train track areas that go to other places in the state, and trucking and warehouse areas that travel all over the state and this part of the Mid-Atlantic. So that is why I really am trying to impress upon people, if they see something odd, say something to me. We get numerous false reports, but we also have had some reports that have been shipment on things where you find a couple dead adults. That's not an infestation, but it's still something to investigate and try to figure out where they came from. When we are dealing with a multi-state area, if you look at some of these areas where the infestation is present, this is marked in blue, okay? And these purple dots are individual finds of the spotted lanternfly, but no infestation is present. So there have been individual finds around our county and around our area, but no infestations present officially as of yet. But this is where the quarantine was as of January, and I know the quarantine is expanded beyond that. This is just an older map, so your folks are going to have to excuse me, but it has expanded into Clark and Warren County, and we have found it as south as Augusta County. Things that
Okay.
are regulated in a quarantine or any life stage of the spotted lanternfly. So if you find a dead one, the we still want to know live or dead insects, and anything that is going to be of nursery stock, green lumber, any kind of firewood, logs, perennial plants, basically anything that it moves in and out of that quarantine area is going to be a regulated item. And VCE has a training online for folks that do a lot of transportation back and forth to the quarantine zone of spotted lanternfly. So it's just really important, if you know someone who does any of these businesses and works between here and Winchester and back, get them in touch with me and I can let them know how
Sure.
to do the training.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, we're almost at our 1 hour mark.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say that we have two lingering questions. One is specifically about mosquito netting.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that's a little too heavy for trees?
Like mosquito netting, like you would put on around
On
patio furniture or something like that?
um, it just says, is mosquito netting too heavy to use? So I'm not really
Hmm.
sure.
I mean, you could give it a try if it looks like your plants are like really struggling to hold it up. Maybe you
Mhm.
want to put some kind of support for it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. If you're really, really worried about, a new tree that you planted, and you might want to create some kind of little support to just drape it over that support, but still be able to contain your tree and still be able to protect your tree.
Mhm.
Again, like I said, this is not going to be a pretty time in the landscape if you want to protect your trees.
Okay.
This is not a time where you're going to have the garden party, because if you want to sit outside and get smacked in the face by a cicada, that'll be fun for me, but not for your guests,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
then this is the perfect question to end on, which is, when will we be when will be the height of the cicada population? If somebody wants to visit during the time where they can see the most cicadas, when should they come?
I would say somewhere around mid-May. And the reason why I'm saying that is I know that our insect ID lab is planning a cicada media day on May 14th at Blandy Farm, and we're trying to get the details. But even if the cicadas aren't yet emerged out there, my assignment is to collect them here, because we know that it'll be warmer here, and I'll get some.
Okay.
But
Good for you.
Kathy, I really appreciate your hosting.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
also want to say, I know there were a lot of folks from our Virginia Cooperative Extension Master Gardener program had a hard time registering last night, and then you reopened the registration for them. So I really appreciate it. Thank
Sure,
you
I'm
very
glad to do
much.
it. I was happily able to do that, and I'm glad we could get as many people here tonight as we can. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording. This program will be